What's up, YouTube? Capital G here. So, the Luxury Championship Series 11 took place over the weekend. And even though I don't generally cover these online tournaments or really do a lot of meta analysis in general on this channel, I thought this one was particularly interesting and definitely worth talking about because this was the first tournament of note being played under the new ban list and new format. Well, by the time you guys see this, it'll be current ban list and format, but definitely interesting because we got to see a sneak peek at what people are playing for the new format, some, spicy text that people are integrating into their deck, and then some of, how the meta might be shaping up, seeing how some people's predictions are coming to fruition, what happened with the old guard, if there is a new guard, etc., etc. So, first off, let's talk about the breakdown. 223 players entered the event. To me, that it definitely is like it's kind of like a good size regional. We had Dragon Link and Eldorado kind of as the most popular decks. I'm counting Eldorado because it counts Zodiac, Eldritch, as like a different deck, not Eldritch. So, I mean, to me, it's kind of the same. We saw Dinosaur also incredibly popular. Then we saw a lot of people falling back to things like Shadow and Invoked. I mean, these were definitely archetypes that were powerful, although, I think really VFD was just holding Alistair down. Alistair has not really lost any power at all, but in a format where VFD go burr, I'm really not sure that you can do much about that. Now, some of the old guard has just fallen off a cliff in terms of representation, and that would be Drytron and Virtual World. I mean, if you're a Drytron, man, it's hard out here. I mean, we're seeing less Drytron players than freaking Buster Blader and Guru. So, obviously, Drytron falling on some very hard times. Same thing for Virtual World. Neither one of the decks, spoiler alert, excuse me, actually ended up making their top 16 cut. So I do not think that we can jump to the conclusion, or that we should jump to the conclusion, that those decks are not good, because I've seen the decks have some very strong combos. I think Virtual World in particular is probably less susceptible to hand traps and definitely can make a very strong board. It doesn't have VFD anymore, and I think that hand looping crap that all the YouTubers have shown off, I think it's trash. I don't think anyone is playing that because it's not really that good, but I do think that the decks are still, I think they're still solid decks. Obviously not nearly as strong as last format, so the ban list obviously did a lot. Like, anyone saying that the ban list didn't shake things up, looks like that's untrue so far. Now, when we go to the top 16, we did see, I mean, this was almost the Alistair show. We haven't seen this much Invoked representation in a very long time. You've got a 50-50 split right down the middle between Shadow and Invoked, where, I mean, we're just going to summon Winda and Construct and beat you down with these purple girls. And then you also have the Dogmatica, side, where we're just going to beat you down with these light girls. And obviously, both of them are very strong. Dogmatica cards, they're still incredibly powerful. It's just, basically, Dogmatica Invoked was, you play against VFD, and not only is your Invoke side just dunzo the second they use VFD's effects, but even one of your best board breaking cards, Nadir Servant, where you usually could get an Ecclesia +1, maybe that gets a Fleur, and you also had the Nethys pop. All of that just went out the window the second your opponent called light off VFD, and none of those effects mattered anymore. We saw some other decks like Eldritch, Zodiac. That's pretty much just a carryover from last format. Absolutely no hits for that, so obviously it's going to be a very strong deck. And then we saw Prank Kids and Mech Knight Invoked. Okay, definitely more going second strategies. I love the fact that blinding second is actually a thing anymore. I mean, you could not blind second last format, where if your opponent opened VFD, you just couldn't play the game. So I love the fact that blinding second is actually a thing again, and we're seeing some success. Now, when it comes to the actual deck list, I'm seeing some spicy tech right from the beginning. So Dragon Link did end up winning the event. I absolutely love this. Fantastical Dragon Phantasme. This is a card I started coming around to very late last format because, yeah, it's unplayable against Virtual World, and, decks like Eldorado and Zodiac. However, against Dragon Link, against Drytron, also against if you run into Adamancipator, or really those super combo heavy decks that were not VW, even against Invoked, because if they get Alistair off, they're always going to link summon. You get the summon Phantasme. It's a huge beater. It draws you a card. I mean, it's a +1, lets you cycle through your hand, which in Dragon Link is important because they can have multiple ways of cycling through their hand with Chaos Space, and then you can also draw into other powerful hand traps. such as Nibiru, such as Dimensional Shifter, because you will not have a graveyard at that point. And in Dragon Link specifically, if the Fantastical Dragon Phantasme lives, not only is it a +1, but then it's also a dragon material for things like Seal and Romulus. So I would not be surprised if this card made a major comeback. I wouldn't, I mean, I'm not going to main deck it, but in Dragon Link, it makes sense. And definitely it's a side deck card like that it's worth looking at, in my opinion. Very strong in the fact that it's a +1. Now we got the kid Ryan Yu. Shout outs to Ryan Yu. He is all grown up and he is a Dino DNA duelist, guys, because yeah, he's been playing this on Dueling Book. He's been grinding, and now he's got a second place finish at this LCS event. This I absolutely love and adore. This I absolutely hate and despise. Everybody knows my opinions on Mystic Mine. I do not. I'm not gonna discourage anyone from playing it. I just hate the card. I mean, it's more or less Konami's fault, not Ryan's. Mystic Mine, in my opinion, is the strongest field spell in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That is still legal, and we have it at 3, so why not play it? They don't have it at 3 in the OCG. And shame on Konami for not hitting this card. But Dinosaurs, I would believe, want to blind second. And this is one of the most powerful blind second cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think that this card is ridiculously good again. I think when VFD was a thing, I don't think you could play this card because, you know, they shotgun it in standby or draw phase. And then you just go, you know, cry basically. But in a format with no VFD, basically everything returns to the mean and everybody kind of gets wrecked by this. Doesn't matter if your name is Dragoon or Appaloosa, Borreload Savage Dragon. I don't care how many negations you have. You all fall to this card unless you got some type of trap or something else. You know, you got to use some tricks like Hot Red Dragon Archie and Abyss with a trap chain or something like that to stop this card. But it's very difficult, and obviously it's a very strong card, especially when you got Big Boy Conductor that can basically attack over everything. So yeah, Dinosaurs look very interesting, and I think that's what people expected to kind of be like the de facto best decks, Dinosaurs, and then also like Dragon Link. I wasn't sold on Dinosaurs, but maybe I'm coming around. We have a carryover from last format, Zodiac Eldritch. Not really much to say here. Forbidden Droplets. This is a card I predicted would fall off the planet. We are still seeing some. I think that its popularity is going to go down. Now, in this deck in particular, it makes sense because in El Dorado, you can give up the El Dorado cards and they all float. You can give up Tenki. That pays for itself immediately. Even giving up Lord doesn't matter. He summons himself from the graveyard. So in this deck in particular, but I feel like the main reason we were main decking Droplet as a staple was simply because of VFD. And without him in the format, I don't know if we absolutely have to play it anymore. We have, yeah, more Invoked decks. You're going to see a lot of Shadow Invoked. I don't know how I feel about the Dragoon engine in here, although I kind of understand it, maybe a little bit. Dragoon is still wildly a powerful card, but it is a little strange seeing the Dragoon engine in some of these other builds like Dragons and Shadows. I'm used to seeing it in like more kind of pure Invoked, but not usually in the Shadow side. But I guess since Shadows can fusion summon and you can set them, and you can still fusion summon with things like Super Polymerization and El Shadow Fusion, I guess it does actually, you know, make sense because you're not so limited. Interesting to see Dinosaurs playing Extravagance. Ryan Yu and another player in top 16, they played the same deck. They both have they've replaced that with Prosperity. This guy's playing Talents. I wonder about Talents because I feel like mine is just better. What are you using Talents on in Dinosaurs? I mean, I guess if your opponent ashes, you're missed, but I feel like usually you're in a bad situation anyways. And obviously one of the biggest cards that hurts Dinosaurs is Lancia, and most people don't wait on Lancia. They just shotgun it in the draw or the standby phase, so you won't usually be able to Talents them. So I don't know. I don't think Dinosaurs is a deck that like needs Talents, in my opinion, especially if you're going to be blinding second. But you know, maybe this guy was going first because he didn't run Mystic Mine or anything like that. We do have pure Mech Knight Invoke. Looks like they have the pot that they're now using is Disparity, kind of like the middle ground between Extravagance and also Desires. Definitely a very good deck. You know, it was a deck that saw tons of play in the OCG, and just, you know, we had a format with VFD that was holding it down. This is a dangerous card. You got to be careful about using Maximus. This card can get you a lot of pluses, but it can also get you in trouble if your opponent is running an extra deck that has, you know, things like, I don't know, if they're playing like Rafflesia Chimera, or if they're playing like their own copies of Nethys and stuff like that. It's definitely a card that can get you in trouble. Now, speaking of Talents, I love it in Prank Kids. This is a deck I believe should play 3 Talents because they're just so susceptible to like every hand trap. Skullmeister stops this deck, and then Ash Blossom stops it, and Nibiru really wrecks this deck. Fantastical Dragon Phantasme is good against it. So I feel like this deck probably needs to run talents. If they hard draw it and it's not useful, they can banish it, I believe, from Rocksteeds. Interesting to see him play like Dino Wrestler Pankatrops. Again, I guess any like singular dead card in this deck can be used for Roxy's, but I do like seeing Prank Kids be played. I think, some people said that the deck is really not that good because it's just too normal summon reliant, and if you kind of just hand trap them, they pass. But maybe that's where the talents comes in, and maybe that's where other cards come in. The deck probably be way better if Instant Fusion was at 3, but I digress. Interesting to see this particular hand trap lineup of Ash, Impermanence, and Nibiru, and that's pretty much it. I'm used to seeing like Prank Kids have somewhere between like, I don't know, 12 and 15 hand traps, so kind of small. Another build of Dogmatica, Invoked, and this is just Shadow Invoked, and this one is also running the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon engine. So I don't know, maybe this is going to become a common thing in the build. I'm just not used to seeing it. But again, I guess if you hard activate this, if you were to hard activate Fusion, which probably is not going to be that common because it's only one copy, I guess you could just set these cards and still do what you want to do. And if not, you can make it with Verde Anaconda. So I guess that's the way. Another thing that I found really interesting, if I can find one of these dragon decks, because we're just scrolling through Alistair Central here, I found it very interesting. A lot of people have made a big deal about Buster Dragon Destruction Sword, whatever that card's name is, coming off the ban list and how it's going to ruin this format. And look, even I might have been on my last live stream in a little bit of the hysteria, but 0 out of the 3 Dragon players actually ran the card. 0 out of them. So all the Yugi Tuber hype videos about how Virtual World hand loop best deck, and this card's gonna ruin Dragon Link, like none of this is coming to fruition. It's been the exact opposite. Also, just it's so jarring to see this, and I do not think this is good in Dragon Link. Like I get that they can make Verde Anaconda, but why do you need Dragoon on your inboard? Like, your inboard is already good. I guess we can wrap this up with the Mech Knight Invoke build. Obviously, this deck wants to blind seconds, and I mean, this is cool because this is just something that was not possible last format. You could not do this. You're not going to sell me on being able to do this last format because it was like either open droplets or lose the game. Now you have so many good board breaking cards. You got Nibiru, you got the Lightning Storm, Super Polymerization. Obviously, Mech Knight specialize in that. And then we have the Kaiju. People run the win one because if you run in the bird up and you got the wrong Kaijus, you're obviously just going to lose the duel. But yeah, it was definitely a super interesting event, and I want to see what's going to carry over. I do tend to think that all the Alistair representation is because people fell back to comfort. They fell back to what they know, and obviously, like, Invoke's not a very hard deck to play, but I still think that there is potential in Drytron and Virtual World, and I want to see if it manifests. Whatever you guys think of the results or anything that you saw interesting, you leave that in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching as always.